Hello, happiness abounders, and welcome back. Today and this week, we are diving into what I think is one of the most important forms of self-care, and something that we weren't taught in school, have never been told by somebody else, but I think it is crucial, especially in today's modern age, and that is emotional self-care. I don't know about you, but I was never taught emotional management. I didn't even know what that was until I started becoming a coach and seeing a real need for it. So that's why I want to spend this whole week really outlining the individual forms of emotional self-care and emotional management so that we can be happier in our lives. Which also brings me to the great point that I also have an upcoming class all about emotional management for happiness. So you can find that on my website at happinessabound.com under courses and emotional management for happiness. So that said, let's dive into emotional self-care. What does that even look like? Right? What does that even mean? Because, like I said, I don't think any of us, and maybe kids these days are, but back in my day, I don't think any of us, nobody I went to school with, had any emotional self-care and emotional management training. And here's why it's important. We're told that we need to take care of ourselves physically, and I think that is a foundational piece and the most popular piece of self-care. But the next most important, but the least observed, the least mentioned, is that emotional aspect. So many of us make our decisions and found our relationships even on the emotions that we have and using those to really run and rule our life. So how can we have emotional self-care so we can come back into alignment, have that balance across all 5 forms of self-care, and really become happier in our lives? I think the first part of that, first form of emotional self-care, is really having an awareness of your emotions, really taking a look at what your emotions are and what you're having, identifying them, and then identifying the underlying emotional triggers for whatever those emotions that you're identifying may be. Now, I've spoken about this in the past, especially at the first of the year when I was all about, and I still am, but when I was sharing theme weeks all about emotional awareness. It's all about taking a look at what your most common 5 emotions are and really pulling the blanket back on them and seeing what they really are. So for me, anger is a big one, but if I pull back anger, that's my blanket emotion. Anger is usually triggered by, has the underlying cause of me being hurt, scared, worried, lonely, right? There's a few underlying trigger emotions in there. So when I can identify those and have awareness of those emotions, I'm already taking a moment to have emotional self-care. Because otherwise, those emotions would be ignored. And when those emotions are ignored, when we're hurt and it's ignored, when we're scared, when we're worried, when we're lonely, when those emotions don't get identified, they start to build up in us. And because they're my underlying for anger, I would get more and more angry. So it wasn't until I had an awareness of that blanket being pulled back and those underlying trigger emotions that I was able to really dive into emotional self-care. Because I could dive into each one of those emotions individually and really look at it and go, why am I hurt? What's hurting me? How can I solve for this pain? Then I could look at, why am I scared? What am I scared of? Is it true? That's the other thing. We tell ourselves stories that may not even be true, but we just tell them to ourselves because it's the first story our brain comes up with. So I'm scared. Is what I'm scared of even true? Has it happened? Is it going to happen? Taking that objective look. I'm lonely. Why am I lonely? Is it because I come home and I don't engage with other people? Maybe I could set some things up. Maybe I need to call a friend. Instead of just seeing anger and going, I'm angry. Right? Because you can't really solve for that. And identifying that you're angry is great, and you can be angry as a standalone. But in my case, and many of the people I've mentors cases, it's been a blanket emotion to pull back and really see those underlying aspects. So as we dive into this week and emotional self-care, one of the key components and the most basic of emotional self-care is really identifying and being aware of your emotions. And pulling back the blanket and saying, why am I feeling this way? Now, it may not be an emotion triggered by another emotion, like anger and me being scared and lonely, worried, etc. It may be, I feel scared because this, and this is happening. Great. Now you're identifying things that are happening in your life and whether or not you can change them. Now it's not just ignoring them and saying, I'm angry. You're seeing all the underlying causes. And you can work through those and have that emotional management and that emotional self-care. So like I said at the first of this episode, I'm teaching a class. It's an in-person free class if you live in Utah and you'd like to come. It's being held at my house. So hopefully I know you. But teaching this class on emotional management for happiness. Now, bonus thing is if you do not live in Utah and you are interested in this class, there will be a recording of this course, really, posted up online and available for purchase shortly after the class, which is April 27th. So if you want to kick off a theme of emotional management and emotional self-care for maybe the month of May, then I highly recommend that you go check that out at happinessabound.com. Go to courses, and it's emotional management for happiness. If you, right now it says that it's free because it's for the in-person class. If you want the online class, put that in the notes and we can work out what that needs to look like. So that said, have a wonderful day. Be aware of your emotions. Pull back that blanket and look at what may be happening under the surface as a form of emotional self-care. And above everything else, remember, you are capable of happiness abound.